What makes a 22 bolt-action rifle truly legendary? Is it the pinpoint accuracy, the history behind it, or is it just that certain feel when you shoulder it, line up your shot, and hear that crisp little pop? For decades, shooters, collectors, and backyard plinkers have argued over which 22 bolt-action rifle deserves the crown. And let me tell you, this debate gets heated. Some folks swear by the Winchester Model 52, calling it the gold standard. Others insist the MS-45 is the real unsung hero. And then there are those rare gems, rifles so elusive that people question whether they even exist until someone, like me, stumbles across one in a dusty gun shop. I've shot and handled more 22s than I can count, but today I'm breaking down the absolute best 22 bolt-action rifles of all time. Some are classics, some might surprise you, and one of them might just end up on your wish list by the time this video is over. We're talking precision, reliability, and history. Whether you're a seasoned shooter, a collector looking for your next piece, or just someone who appreciates a beautifully made rifle, this list has something for you. So let's jump in, starting with a rifle that's often called the greatest 22 ever made, the Winchester Model 52. If there's one rifle that has defined what a 22 bolt action should be, it's the Winchester Model 52. Some folks call it the king of 22s, and honestly, I can't argue with that. This rifle has been around for over a century, and even today, it still holds its own against modern precision rifles. That alone should tell you something. The first time I picked up a Model 52, I knew I was holding something special. The balance, the weight, the craftsmanship, everything about this rifle screams premium. Winchester introduced it back in 1919, originally designed as a target rifle, but it quickly became a favorite for competition shooters and small game hunters alike. It's chambered in .22 long rifle, of course, and features one of the smoothest bolt actions I've ever cycled. It just glides. But what really sets the Model 52 apart is the adjustable trigger. For a factory trigger, it's shockingly crisp. If you've ever shot one, you know exactly what I mean. That clean, predictable break makes it incredibly easy to shoot tight groups, whether you're on the range or out in the field. Now, I won't pretend it's a perfect rifle. For one, these things are not cheap. Finding an original Model 52 in good condition can set you back quite a bit, and even the reproductions, like the ones Browning and Morocco made, aren't exactly budget-friendly. But that's the price you pay for one of the best-built 22s ever made. Another thing worth mentioning is that while it's a phenomenal target rifle, it's not the most practical for casual plinking. This isn't the gun you throw in the back of your truck and beat up. The Model 52 is built like a Swiss watch, and it deserves to be treated like one. But when it comes to accuracy, this rifle is legendary. If I had to bet my life on making the perfect shot with a 22, this would be the rifle I'd reach for. The combination of that smooth action, the outstanding trigger, and the rock-solid build make the Winchester Model 52 a true masterpiece. Is it the best 22nd bolt action of all time? Well, a lot of people think so, but there's another rifle that deserves just as much respect. One that might not look as fancy, but trust me, it performs. The MS-45. Now, if you judged rifles purely by how they look, the MS-45 wouldn't even be in this conversation. Compared to the Winchester Model 52, it's rough, simple, and honestly, kind of ugly. But let me tell you something. Looks can be deceiving. I didn't even know about the MS-45 until people started writing to me, telling me it was the best 22 bolt action ever made. At first, I shrugged it off. I mean, how could some old military training rifle compete with the Winchester? But then I got my hands on one, and after putting a few hundred rounds through it, I finally understood what all the fuss was about. The MS-45 was built in France, but is actually based on a Mauser design. That's right, this little rifle has German DNA, and if there's one thing Mauser is known for, it's precision machining. The action is built like a tank, with a proper Mauser-style bolt that locks up beautifully. It's got a flag safety, just like its big brother, and the trigger? Simple, but surprisingly good. But what really sold me on the MS-45 is the accuracy. This thing is scary precise. It's got a heavy barrel, which helps keep it stable, and it comes with a fantastic aperture sight. If you've never shot with an aperture sight before, let me tell you, it makes hitting your target almost effortless. You don't even have to think about it. Just line up the sights, squeeze the trigger, and boom, dead center. Now, let's talk about availability. These rifles were originally used for military training, so they weren't exactly mass-produced for the civilian market. That means finding one today isn't the easiest thing in the world. And if you do find one, chances are it's going to look well used. The one I picked up had seen better days. The stock was worn, the finish was faded, but the bore was perfect. And when you're talking about accuracy, that's what matters. One thing I love about military training rifles is that they were built to last. The MS-45 is no exception. It's rugged, reliable, and designed to take abuse. And because it was made for training new shooters, it's one of the most forgiving 22s you can get your hands on. So, is it better than the Winchester Model 52? That depends. If you want something refined, something polished, go with the Winchester. But if you want a workhorse, something that just shoots and shoots no matter what, then the MAS-45 might just be the best-kept secret in the 22 world. And trust me, if you ever get a chance to buy one, don't hesitate. BSW German Sporter. There's something special about old German rifles. The craftsmanship, the precision, the attention to detail. It's just on another level. And when I got my hands on a BSW German Sporter, I knew right away that this was more than just another 22-bolt action. This was a rifle with soul. Now, you might not have heard of this one, and that's fair. It's not as famous as the Winchester Model 52 or the MAS-45, but for serious collectors, it's a holy grail. This rifle was made by BSW in Suhl, Germany, and when I say it's built like a fine piece of machinery, I mean it. It's chambered in 5.6 by 35mm RWS, which is an old European hunting cartridge, and it's got some of the cleanest machining I've ever seen on a rimfire rifle. The first thing that jumps out is the double-set trigger. If you've never used one before, here's how it works. You press the rear trigger to set the front trigger, and once you do, the front trigger becomes incredibly light. I'm talking about a hair trigger level of sensitivity. It's an old-school design, but it's perfect for precision shooting. What's interesting about this rifle is that it came with a hidden message under the butt plate. I'll admit, I was hoping for something historical, maybe a soldier's note or an old German marking. Turns out, it was just propaganda. Not exactly the treasure I was hoping for, but hey, still a cool story. This rifle, like most high-end German firearms, wasn't made in huge numbers, which means finding one today is a challenge. And if you do find one, be prepared to pay. But if you're into collecting rare, beautifully made firearms, this one is a gem. Would I take this over the Winchester or the MAS-45? Probably not, at least not for regular shooting. But as a collector's piece, as something that represents the golden age of German gunsmithing, the BSW German Sporter is top tier. Now let's talk about a rifle that's even more mysterious, one so rare that some people didn't even believe it existed. Gevarm Carabine Automatique. Alright, so here's the deal. I once mentioned in passing that I owned a Gevarm Carabine Automatique in 22 short, and right away, I started getting comments telling me I was mistaken. People swore up and down that this rifle was never made in 22 short, that it was only ever chambered in 22 long rifle. Now, I'm not one to argue over technicalities, but let me tell you, I've got the rifle sitting right here, and it's definitely chambered in 22 short. Sometimes, the internet just likes to argue for the sake of arguing. This rifle is a bit of an oddball. It's a semi-auto open bolt design, which is pretty uncommon for a 22. If you're not familiar with how an open bolt rifle works, it's pretty simple. Instead of the bolt staying closed when you pull the trigger, it actually starts in the open position. When you fire, the bolt slams forward, picks up a round, and fires it in one motion. It's a very simple, very reliable design. One of the coolest things about this rifle is how quiet it is. Because it's chambered in 22 short, there's very little powder being burned, and if you pair it with a suppressor, it's almost Hollywood quiet. It's honestly one of the smoothest, most enjoyable plinkers I've ever shot. Now, finding one of these is next to impossible. They weren't made in huge numbers, and a lot of them have probably disappeared into private collections. But if you do manage to track one down, grab it. Not only is it historically interesting, but it's also just a fun gun to shoot. One minor drawback, because it's an older design, mounting a scope on it is a bit of a pain. This rifle might not be for everyone, but for those of us who love collecting quirky, hard-to-find twos, it's a real treasure. And believe me, the second I find another one, I'm buying it. No questions asked. Now, before we wrap this up, I have to give a shout out to a few rifles that didn't quite make the main list but still deserve recognition. If you're into 22 bolt actions, these are all worth checking out. First up, the CZ457. If you want modern precision, this is the rifle to beat. CZ took everything great about their older rimfire rifles and made it modular. You can swap barrels, change calibers, and adjust the trigger, all straight out of the box. The build quality is phenomenal, and if you slap a good scope on it, this thing will punch single-hole groups at 50 yards all day long. It's one of the best factory 22s you can buy right now. Then there's the Anschutz 54, and this one is in a league of its own. If you've ever watched Olympic small-bore shooting, there's a good chance you've seen one of these in action. Anschutz is known for competition-grade precision, and the 54 series is built for pure accuracy. The only downside? It's expensive. Like, really expensive. But if you want the absolute best in terms of precision, this is it. And finally, the Ruger American Rimfire. I had to include at least one budget-friendly option on this list. It's not as refined as the others, but it's accurate, reliable, and perfect for beginners. Plus, it takes 10-22 magazines, which is a huge bonus. So while these didn't make the top list, they're still incredible rifles. And depending on your budget and what you're looking for, one of these might be the perfect fit. But now, let's wrap this up. So, there you have it. The best 22 bolt-action rifles of all time. From the legendary Winchester Model 52 to the military workhorse MS-45, the collector's dream BSW German Sporter, and the ultra-rare Gevarm carabine automatique, these rifles have all earned their place in rimfire history. Now here's the big question. Which one is the best? Well, that depends on what you're looking for. If you want pure precision and a rifle that stood the test of time, the Winchester Model 52 is hard to beat. If you're after a rugged, military-style shooter, the MS-45 might just be the perfect choice. If you love rare and collectible rifles, the BSW German Sporter or Gevarm carabine automatique could be worth the hunt. At the end of the day, that's the beauty of 22 bolt-action rifles. There's something for everyone, whether you're a collector, a competitor, or just someone who loves the simple joy of sending lead downrange. But now I want to hear from you. What's your favorite 22 bolt-action rifle? Did I miss one that you think deserves a spot on this list? Drop a comment below and let's keep the conversation going. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe for more firearm content, and stay tuned, because there's always another great rifle to talk about. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.